to revisit a project I did over a year ago, or about a year ago, and I made a little dress, a little girl's dress that was made from a t-shirt and a piece of fabric, and I turned it from a shirt into a dress. And I'm wearing a dress that I just got at a thrift store that I love. It's a Cold Water Creek. I'm going to stand up. It's a comfy, simple little dress. It just has a seam here, slightly gathered, all knit, comfy as can be. I love dresses like this. I would rather wear a dress than pants. And because of that, I want to turn some t-shirts that I bought that I don't love. They fit great on top, but they're just not long enough. I love the way they fit, so I'm going to show you my cute little t-shirts. These are super cheap little t-shirts that I picked up. So here's a little stripe, and here is a little polka dot. And I bought this fabric. I'm repurposing fabric from another project. It is a lightweight, sort of a chambray in a light blue, and I like the way it looks with both of these. I have not quite 2 yards of it. This one I measured. Let me introduce myself. I measured where the seam was on this, and it's 14 inches in the front down, and the seam still kind of hits in my bust line. I'd like it to go below the bust line, so I'm going to cut the top part a little, just a tiny bit longer, and then the rest will be this cute little chambray skirt. I'm just going to cut it in 2 lengths. I want to add a pocket to it. I don't have enough of this to add a pocket, so if I do, I'm going to have to add a pocket out of yet another fabric. And I know I won't have quite enough at the bottom of the t-shirts to, I don't think I will, to use the t-shirt fabric to make a pocket. If I do, I'm going to. We'll see. We'll see what the pocket ends up being made out of. But I'm just going to, it's going to be super fast and easy. I'm going to be combining a woven and a knit with each other. It'll have a slight gathering in the skirt. It'll hang nice and soft. This is a nice drapey soft woven, so I think it'll hang great. It's going to be fun for spring. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to lay out my t-shirts and show you how I'm cutting them. I know I'm going to do the polka dot one with a slight curved seam, so it's going to be very slightly high-low. So the front will be a little shorter than the back, and it's going to have a nice little round curve front to back around it. And then the stripe I'm just going to do straight because it's going to visually be more attractive in the stripe, not to interrupt that too much. So those are the ways I'm going to handle both of these. I'm going to make 2 dresses today and show you the very fast and easy process. And this is a great way to upcycle or recycle a shirt that you like. Don't you get the little holes right at the waist, the tummy, when you lean and do your dishes and do stuff, and you end up with little tiny holes in your shirt? Well, you could cut it off just a little bit above that and repurpose it into a little summer dress. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I will next see you at the cutting table where I'll show you how I cut the t-shirts and I cut apart my fabric. The nice thing about this striped shirt is that it is cut evenly, so the stripes don't slightly veer one direction or another, which could easily happen in a very inexpensive ready-made shirt. This ruler is 18 inches, and if I do 18 inches and I have 30 inches of fabric to work with, which means I have to include my seam allowances and my hem in that, I can get almost the same length dress that I'm currently wearing between those two. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this right at the 18 inch. I can always shorten it. Let me go show you something in the mirror. I'm at the mirror with my phone. I want to show you something. So if you look at the person, let me step back so you can see my whole body here. Depending on where the seam is, if you have 2 different fabrics, it can divide your body up. So if I have a seam up high in one fabric and the rest is another, that elongates the leg and it makes you look taller. The other thing you can do is have a seam down low, which gives you a long body and a shorter leg, but again, it still gives you length and makes you look taller. The thing you don't want to do is be cut completely in half. You have to be a 9-foot tall human being who's super slim for that to look good on. It just never looks nice. So you want to have, usually it's the 1/3, 2/3 rule. The top is 1/3 and the bottom is 2/3. It doesn't have to be perfectly exactly that measurement, but you want to be close. So I'm doing the same thing. My top is going to be shorter and my skirt is going to be longer. Almost 1/3 top to 2/3 bottom, and that gives me a longer leg, a slimmer line. It's more attractive. Even in this where it looks like it's one long thing, but it's more slimming. Those sort of measurements trick the mind. They give and will help you look a little more flattering, a little more svelte in your garment. I'm going to cut it right along this line, but I'm only going to cut one layer, the front layer, and then I'm going to turn it over and cut the back. It does look like they did a great job. See this? See how it's lined up on the seam? That's a good news for me. That's going to make my life easier. It's going to look more visually attractive. If you have something where they're not lined up at all and your stripes are a little wonky, it's going to be a little harder to make look good. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this across, and then I will show you how to do the curve on the next one. All right, the stripe is cut all the way around, nice and even. If I had laid this flat and cut straight across, because they weren't lined up perfectly front to back, I could have had some mistakes on my back side. So going around in a circle is the best way to do it. And I just came up the seam and around. And by doing that, I have a big enough scrap of this that I think I can get my pocket out of it. So yay me. Okay, we're gonna work on this now. Make sure that you have your seams perfectly lined up and everything before you start. I know I'm going to do this at a slight curve, so I'm going to measure. I'm going to start all the way up here at this highest point on each side. I'm going to come straight down, and I'm going to do this curve. So it's going to be, I'm going to kind of go like this, and it's going to be at the highest in the center point. So I'm going to actually make a couple marks, one in the center front, one at each shoulder, and then one at the side seam, and then I'm going to just connect my curves for the front. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the opposite curve. I'm going to curve down for the back. I'll show you after I'm through drawing it on. Here's my center front. And you do not want a perfect curve here. You want a little short area that's perfectly straight. If you come in hard up from both directions, you'll get a point. And if you're not careful, let me show you on my curve here. If you use your curve to draw it, depending on your curve, you could actually end up with the point that comes in, almost like the bottom of a little heart. So you want to make a nice straight edge and then come from that straight edge to do your curve from there. So that's what I'm doing now. So here's my first curve where I've connected up. Now you could, depending on how dramatic a curve you want, you could just keep going, but see how deep that's going to be? So instead, I'm picking my curve up and I'm flipping it the other direction to get a little bit softer slope. All right, so here I have folded my shirt on the center front and the center back. I've lined up my side seams. If you look right here, can you see that they don't quite match up? I actually started from the underarm seam and went down because sometimes they aren't perfect at the side, and this one wasn't. They're off just by that much, so you may not want to measure it from this bottom up. You may want to go from underarm down. And now that I've done that, the reason I did this is so that they're perfectly symmetrical right to left. So here's my curve, slowly going this way. And you can see I altered just a tiny bit. There was my side seam, and I just brought it down a little bit, less than half an inch. And so this is my new curve. I'm going to cut it and look at it. I'm going to cut it and see how I like the look and if I want to do any tweaking. All right, so here it is cut. I did decide to cut longer, so I cut next to my line, a little over half an inch around. And so there's sort of the shape. You can see it still looks a little bit pointy, and I may smooth this out just a tiny bit in here. So now I'm going to cut. I'm actually tearing. I'm just making a nick and tearing across to get my skirt panels. I'm going to cut them as long as I can. I'm going to just pretty much divide the fabric in half. The thing with this one is I'm going to get a little bit of a high-low skirt, and the other one I'll have a nice even straight around skirt. So they will have, even though they're both t-shirt topped with chambray bottomed skirts, they're going to look a little different. And I still have enough of this to get a pocket. After truing up both edges, so I've just clipped and torn. Not every fabric will tear, but a lot of them, good wovens like this, will tear very easily. I have 54 inches of fabric in length. I have about 60 inches in width, which is perfect. I just need one width for the skirt. So that gives me 27 inches to work with for the skirt. So let's do some math. So this shirt I cut 18.5, and I will have 27 inches for a skirt. So that's not quite my third rule, but it's still more length in skirt than top, so it'll still be okay. So before seam allowances, I have about 45 5.5, 46 inches total, which is great because I want this to end around 42. So I have a room for a hem and seam allowances. So perfect for this one. After measuring this, I will have 42 inches in the front, 47 in the back, which is fine. That gives me a little bit extra for hem. That's before seam allowance, so I can live with that. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut my skirt panel. I'm going to clip and tear. So I have 22 27-inch strips. Then I'm going to cut it in half to get a seam here for the side seam where I can put a pocket if I want to. And I'm going to cut off my selvage edge. I'm only going to do a little 1/4 inch serged seam on the skirt to attach it to this, and then I will be ready to install pockets and do gathering and all that stuff. So after I tear this, I will see you back at the sewing machine. If you've never torn before, I just made a little nip all the way through my seam allowance, and I'm realizing I'm holding my phone. This is not going to be easy to do one-handed. Put my elbow on it one-handed. It will always tear on the straight of grain. See how perfectly that's tearing? Perfectly straight. The only time a fabric will not tear on straight of grain is if it's rotted, and you're not going to be working with rotten fabric, so you don't need to worry about that. The other time it just won't tear is if it's a knit or if it has a very intricate type of woven in design that's very loosely woven. Those are the fabrics you can't tear. But a lot of these nice wovens you can. All right, working on our skirt, I would recommend pressing out your skirt layer. If it was like mine and a little bit wrinkly, it's a lot easier to get those selvage edges off nice and neat and even. And now that I've done that, I have no selvage, I'm just folding this in half so that I have the same amount front and back for my skirt. And I want to show you. See, I have torn everything. So this is straight of grain, but can you see how when it's folded in half, see how it pulls? All that's telling me is that it was warped when it was put onto the bolt. So after I do this next little tear, I'm going to show you a trick. So I folded this in half to get my other side seam. You could leave it if you're only putting in one pocket and you don't care about having a side seam, and you could leave it just like this. I'm going to have seam to seam. I think it just makes it easier for matching up when I'm sewing. So here's my fold. Just going to make a little nick. It's about 1 inch long. Okay, if you can't stand the sound of ripping fabric, cover your ears. So I've torn the two pieces. I'm going to line them back up. The fabric pulls to one side. So can you see that? See the difference when it's even at the top, and then here it is on the back side. You can see it pulls to one side. So we are going to pull opposite. I'm going to back up so you can see this. We're going to pull on the bias of the fabric. So if I look at this one, see how it's short down at the bottom? I'm going to grab the short end and the top up here opposite, and I'm going to pull gently. Sometimes you have to pull kind of hard. I've done this for huge amounts of fabric at the same time. I'm going to continue to pull along that bias. If you pull accidentally the wrong way, you can really get it skewed wrong. But I'm going to pull, pull, pull. Now that's just one layer, but I'm going to hold it up so you can see now. And I didn't pull very hard. I may have to pull a little harder and a little more. But can you see how much better it is? Now I have to do this back one also. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other piece. And that may not be perfect, but it's going to be a lot closer. And what that does is it keeps your skirt from twisting. Getting closer and closer. It's a little smaller. Can you see how much closer it is now? Almost there. I'm going to continue to do that till they are almost perfectly lined up. I've already done the other one. Okay, so since I'm going to put this one aside, and we're going to assembly line the skirts. So once you've got these and they're nice and straight, you've got nice straight block pieces. Set my machine for a basting stitch because I'm going to gather. So I'm going to set it to 4 or 5 stitch length, and I'm going to do 2 rows of gathers, one right on top of each other, front and back. I'm going to start over about 1/2 inch and start my stitches, don't back stitch. Okay, so I'm going to run my stitching lines and show you what those gathering stitches look like. I'll be right back. This is what a gathering stitch looks like. I set my machine for over a 4 stitch length. You can do 4, 4.5, 5, whatever your long stitch length is. Some machines get really long. And then I didn't sew all the way to the edge. I left a little bit extra for my seam allowance. And I have 2 parallel lines. One's at a 1/4 inch and one's at a 1/2 inch. It depends on the seam allowance you're using. If you're doing 5/8 inch seam allowance, then do one of your lines on the 5/8 and the other one at like 3/8, something like that. You want them parallel and you want a little space between them so that when you pull the top threads together at the same time, they will ripple together and it'll give you a nice even line, which I'll show you in just a minute. So we're going to prep all of our skirts like this and do the top row exactly like this. And we have 4 panels that look this way. So this is how it looks. And I chose to use an opposing color to make it easy for you to see. If you're doing this at home, match your threads. Match your threads, match your threads, match your threads. They get pulled out anyway. And then you can pull them evenly. You want to pull both at the same time. And you're only pulling the top threads. You're leaving the bottom threads or the bobbin threads alone. I'm going to just do a little pull so you can see how nicely you get a gather. Can you see how pretty that looks? Great. And here it is from the back. So this is what we're going to do. All right, so I've got my basting stitches in. I've got my little pocket pieces cut. Now, because of how I'm sewing mine, I'm not making my seam on my waistline. I had to measure where I wanted my pocket to start. I didn't want my pocket to start up high where the seam is. So you can see my pocket's down here. So I've gone ahead and sewn one pocket. I'm only doing one pocket on the right side. Now my skirt's the same front and back, so it doesn't really matter till I go to put it on. I want to just make sure I get that pocket on the right side because I'm right-handed and I prefer to have my pocket on the right side. So when you go to sew your pocket on, I've pinned it in, right sides together, and I just have a little square here. And I actually took out the hem of the piece to get it just a little bit longer for my pocket, to make my pocket a little bit bigger. So I marked where I want my pocket to start. This is where I'm actually going to be stitching, so I'm going to have a little seam allowance on each side so that when I come back to serge around it, I have seam allowance to catch it. It's just going to make it easier to sew, and I'm going to show you that on this one. So, because I'm assembly lining this. If you're going to make more than one of these, that's how to do it. So, here's this one. I've already serged. This one I had a lot more fabric to work with for my pocket. Look at this. So I've serged on my pocket, and I've got a little bit at the top here. See this? And then, of course, here's the bottom of my pocket. So what I'm going to do now, and it's right sides together, so I'm going to put right sides together like this. And I can serge all the way down, and I'm going to flip those seam allowances up, and then I'm going to come across the pocket. Now this one I left folded, so I don't have to come down this part because that's folded. But then I'll pick up here and I'll do the same thing, and because of how I sewed it, I have seam allowance down here to allow me to turn. After I've done that, I'm going to come back with my sewing machine and do just a little bit of stitching right on top to come down beyond where this little join is, and it's just going to make it look neater. I'll show you that when I get to that point. But I'm ready to do that, so I can actually put my whole skirt together, and then I'm ready to gather it and attach it. So I'm going to go ahead and serge the side that doesn't have a pocket. Make sure you keep your little strings out of the way. I like to do my gathering stitches before I sew it together because I just like to gather it nice and flat and not in a tube. If it's easier for you, put your skirt together to this point and then do the gathering stitches. But I'm going to go ahead and just zip down this edge, serge it together, and that's why I started my stitching a little bit back. So I'm not going to catch any of these little threads when I overlock. If you do nothing, it kind of looks like this right now. Can you see it sort of? It's fine. And I love how this is on the inside. I think that's adorable. But I can make this prettier with just a couple little stitches on each end. It'll just make the pocket lay flatter. So that's what I'm going to do next. So we're at the pocket on the inside. You can see I've serged, I've turned the corner, I've got all my serging done. And now I'm going to, can you see this little funky part right here? I'm going to put it under my machine and I'm going to straight stitch down to about here to just give a nice, smooth, prettier transition of the pocket. And I'm going to do a little bit down here at the bottom of the pocket too, just a tiny bit. And that will make the other side, when I flip it around, nice. Skirts are together but not gathered. So doesn't look like much yet, big piece of fabric, but look at my little pocket and look at how cute it looks because the inside matches the top. I think that's adorable. So the next thing we're going to do for the skirt and the top for both pieces, because I'm making two, is we're going to mark our side seams, which are marked already, and our center front and our center back. So I'm just going to lay our sides on top of each other and gently pull. This is very stretchy fabric, so I'm not going to stretch it. I just want it to be nice and flat. And I'm going to find, here's the center front, here's the center back. Stick a pin in it, because we're going to use this, you know, we've done it before, quartering, quartering, quartering. We're going to line up center front, center back to center back, skirt to top for both pieces. For this one, it's nice and straight, so it's pretty straightforward and simple. So here's my side seams or seams, that makes it easy. And then here's this side seams, makes that part easy. So we're going to put side seam by the side seam, and we aren't trimming off any of those basting threads. We need all those threads still because we haven't used them yet. Side seam on top of side seam, pull. So here's the center front, put a pin in it. Here's the center back, put a pin in it. So now, here I am. Here's my right side. I have the right side out. This is my right side with my pocket. Here's my center front. I'm going to take the center front of my shirt. Ta-da! And I'm going to put center front pin to center front pin. And I'm going to pin them to each other before I've ever gathered. We're pinning first and then gathering between the pins, and that way we know we get nice and even gathers, so we don't end up with all of our gathers to the left or the right, or all in the front and all in the back. So we're going to just pin our side seams now. It's not a ton, it won't be a ton of gathering. It'll be a little bit. If you want a really full skirt, you're going to need a lot more. It depends on your size, of course. But I'm doing a plus size shirt, so it'll be sort of straight, kind of like what I'm wearing right now. The skirt I have on is not real full in this dress, which is great. It's nice and straight, and it looks nice. It's slimming, which is exactly what I want. So once I get these all pinned together, so here I am. I've got my top pinned in the front. Now I can come and I can take my threads and pull them. It doesn't really matter which threads you pull as long as you consistently always pull the same ones. So always pull the bobbin threads or always pull the top threads. If you pull top on one side and bobbin on the other, you take away all your ability to continue to gather. It does this weird thing where it locks it up and you no longer, your gathering just won't work. So you have to be consistent. So I go from quartering to eighths. And all this does is even give me more or even spacing. So look, so now I have yet another one. So now I can pull my little gathers. Now if you want a really tight gather, at the beginning of this video, I put a little iCard for the t-shirt dress that I did for a little girl, the little girl sized one. If you want to do that, you need wider fabric or more panels. So on this one, I just have a 60-inch wide piece of fabric I'm doing front and back with, so not a very full skirt. If I wanted a really full skirt, I would want to cut that panel. I'd want to have 4 panels, 120 inches, and then I could have really tight gathers like that, which I'm not going to. But if that's what you want, you need, and you have to do a little math. You have to measure how wide is my shirt. I need to double the width of that front and back to get some decent gathers. And you may even want more gathers than that. The more gathers you have, the softer your fabric needs to be. You don't want to be gathering up super heavy denim like this. Your skirt will be stiff and bulky and hard to sew. So you want a nice soft weight, lightweight, like this chambray or a rayon or something like that. So I'm just going to continue to gather like this. Once I get it gathered up, I'm going to put a few pins to hold it, and I'm just going to serge around the top, and my skirt's on. All that will be left is hemming. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for this one, and I'm going to show you this one, because this one has the uneven top. Now I cut my skirt even. The top is uneven. The top is shorter in the front and gets longer in the back. And because the skirt piece is even, what's going to happen is I'm still going to end up with a high-low skirt, because that skirt is going to fall along. It's going to be stitched to the unevenness of the top. I get an automatic high-low without having to do any extra work on my skirt. So I'm going to quarter the same way I did, but on this one, and it's just as easy. Even though it's curvy, it doesn't matter, because we can find our side seams and find our center front and our center back. I'm going to go ahead and mark it real quick just so you can see. Here's my side seams. So there's my center front. See I don't know if you can see, but there's the curve down. And then on the back, here's my center back. So, and then I'll do the same thing. Quarter it and pin it on. So I'm going to get these pinned together, and then we'll stitch them on, and I'll show you what they look like. I have skirts attached. Look at there. Skirts are on. Now I'm going to go back and pull out all my excess threads. You can see them hanging there. So the threads are going to come out, and then all that is left is a good press and the hem. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those threads out, give it a good haircut. I'm going to turn up a 1-inch hem on both of them. I'm actually considering doing a 2-inch hem. I should try them on real quick and see. I may do a 2-inch hem. I'll try it on first, but I'm just doing a straight stitch hem, pressing it up, straight stitching it. May do a double stitch. We'll see. I'm not going to do the cover stitch on my serger this time. And then they're done, and I'll put one on the dress form and maybe put one on me, and I'll show you what they look like. Here it is finished. You can see that it's quite a slim fit on my hips. Here's the other one that I made, and I'm going to tell you I don't like it as well. So here's the other one, and it's fine on the body. I'm going to just turn it. You can see how long it is back here, and because I did the high-low, it kind of does a little tucky thing that I'm not real sure about, and it's also kind of big back here. I'm small right here and then really full, and a lot of times this area is sort of a hollow, and so I need to, I think I'm going to actually just put a tiny bit of elastic in this seam in the back only on this one, and I think the fit's going to be a lot better. I love the little pocket detail on both of them. I think it's super cute how the t-shirt pocket peeks in. I did a little bit shorter hem, just a 1/2 inch. This one's a 2-inch hem of it, and then this one I did 1.5 inches, so almost exactly the same, just a little bit longer on that one, but I think it's really cute. I like it. If you want a fuller skirt, do 4 panels or 3 panels and stagger your seam to it so that you have seams here, or you could even have a center front, center back, and side seams. It's up to you if you want a really full skirt. I think the next time I do this, and I'm sure I will, I have a lot of t-shirts that are kind of like this where they fit fine here but they don't look great down there. Then I'm going to do this again, and I might do a gourd skirt next time. So we'll probably be revisiting this one more time. But I like the little project. I think it's cute. I definitely will wear it. It's nice and easy little dress to wear around the house, which is what I like, a little house dress. You need to go make one yourself.
Early morning editing Stacy here after finishing it and thinking about it. On day 2, I really wish I would have used all of the fabric in one dress instead of trying to make 2 dresses and being super parsimonious with my chambray. I just think I would have enjoyed it more. It would have laid better. I would have just been a happier person, and I may take them apart and redo it and put all of the fabric into the striped shirt and buy different fabric for the other top. I don't know. They're perfectly wearable the way they are, but if you're doing this project and you want a nice full skirt, don't skimp on your fabric. You want to use at least double the width of your hem of your top in your skirt for a nice full skirt. I don't have that. Mine is, I don't know, I have like 30 inches more in the skirt than in the top, which is nice, but not nearly enough. I could have had 90 inches more and it would have been much cuter. So learn from my mistakes. You may see this project in a Stacy Does a Project Update video where it's completely changed. We'll see. I can wear it, and I probably will wear it the way it is. I don't mind a straight little skirt. We'll see, but that's the update.
I have a feeling this hasn't been working for a very, very, very long time. We'll find out. I'm having mic confusion.